Can you explain more how you managed working with the local Iraqi troops? General Mattis, who I hold in the highest esteem, said something to the effect that if you are doing anything that negatively impacts relations with allied forces, you are of more use to the enemy than you are to your team. This makes it quite obvious that he believes that full cooperation with allied forces is key to attaining victory. It is a well-established fact that most of the Iraqi forces were incompetent to the point of posing danger to U.S. troops. So what steps did you take to ensure success when working with them?
Well, obviously, relations with your allies are critical. I mean, it's cover and move, right? You got to work together as a team, and if you're working against each other, that's absolutely catastrophic. I think for us with Iraqi troops, again, we talked about how that was liberating, right? For the big pushback was always like, we want to do just SEAL unilateral operations. We call it just SEALs or just Americans, just like NATO ally forces, and not work with Iraqi troops. And when you said that right away, Tasking Bruce, listen, don't even put up a concept operations brief, a CONOPS we call it, which is the approval for the plan that doesn't have Iraqi troops on it. Okay, got it. We're going to have to figure out a way to make that happen. So that was, the line was drawn. We knew we had to do that. And we knew it was also important. I mean, because you explained that. We talked about it. We thought through that. But obviously we had to take some steps to mitigate that. So I think there were, again, this is the dichotomy. You got to be balanced. I saw units who thought, and we gave some examples, even extreme ownership, certainly. And we talk about regularly about where you see a unit that would take 2 or 4 Americans and a bunch of Iraqis and try to go into a really bad area. You're like, man, you're not going to be able to count on those Iraqis in the middle of a gunfight when they're overwhelmed. You better have enough Americans there to have your back. So they were asking too much of the Iraqis. And then there were other units that didn't want to have any Iraqis with them, didn't want to have any relationships with them. And I had some stern talking to some of my guys who weren't treating Iraqi soldiers with respect. I threatened one of my guys who was going to have to go sleep in the Iraqi soldiers' barracks if he didn't go shake their hand.
I think he was, knowing that particular individual who's a great guy, yeah. I think that was the last threat you had to make to him to make him submit to doing that.
He didn't think I was serious at first. I was like, I'm totally serious. You better fix this. So
and you know what? Props to SF guys, MIT teams that go out there and they live, they eat. Even having Dakota Meyer on here, he did 2 meals a day out of 3 with his Afghan soldiers. That's awesome. And you know what I liked about this question was the way that it relates to the civilian sector. Because you know what I talk about a lot? A lot of times I talk about how my relationship with my boss, regardless of who my boss was, regardless if my boss was great or my boss was horrible, my relationship was always the same. I was going to build a relationship where they trusted me. They gave me what I needed to do my job, and then they let me do my job. That's the relationship I always had with all my bosses, right? But that same methodology and concept can absolutely be applied to other organizations that you're supposed to work with. So whether it's the Army, whether it's the Marine Corps, whether it's the Iraqi soldiers, whether it's the MPs, whether it's the intel people, the intel organization that you're working with, no matter what the organization, you can build a relationship. Again, might you love that organization? No, you might not. And where I see this all the time, we see it all the time now, is with businesses. Because guess what? There's no business that's standalone, or I should say there's very few that are completely vertically integrated businesses. I mean, like at Origin, right? We're pretty vertically integrated, but guess what? We don't grow the cotton. Like, we don't do that. We don't grow cotton. But guess what? We have a good relationship with the people that grow cotton. We have a good relationship with the people that dye the cotton. So we build those relationships with those other people. Now, I work with businesses where there's a supplier that they don't like. So guess what? They form a hostile relationship with this whole company, a whole company. What good does that do them? It doesn't do them any good at all. What it means is they have no personal relationships. They form that antagonistic relationship with a whole nother organization, and it's almost impossible to overcome. So now this is something where if you don't explain that culture throughout your team, they're going to treat that other team horribly. And so if you're waiting on supplies, if you're on a construction site and you're waiting for materials to be delivered and you don't have a good relationship with the people that deliver the drywall, and now the drywall's running late for whatever reason, and you fly off the handle or whatever, you're not going to get that drywall any earlier. It's not happening. Have you ever, you know, when I call customer service, right? Customer service. I learned this when I was working for the Admiral, working for the Admiral's Aid. I'd call up, we traveled a lot, and I'd have to call up whatever, Delta or American, whoever, and I'd be trying to get whatever, seats on an aircraft or something, or a flight that was full, whatever, get him an upgrade, whatever. And you know, I'd say, "Hey, how you doing?" I'd always start off with the because they're going, "American Airline, how can I help you?" And they're mad, right? They're just mad to start with.
How dare you call me?
Out of the gate, they're mad. Whatever, you know, airline, whatever car rental service, whatever restaurant, like people are just mad.
They don't care.
They're mad. They don't know who you are.
Well, they've just talked to probably, you know, the last 25 people who've screamed and yelled at them,
and it's awful. So, you know, you call them and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And you know, I had little micro jokes that I would make with the airlines that I used with all of them all the time. But one of them was, they'd say, "Well, do you need to sit next to your boss?" And I'd say, "You know what? I'd honestly appreciate it if you put me as far away from it." And they'd laugh, and then they'd try and hook me up, even though my boss was a great guy and I'd sit with him all day. But just, it was a funny thing, and it humanized me with them. They thought I was some poor sorry bastard that had to travel with his boss, and then they were trying to take care of me. It was like awesome. So I would get the hookups. I remember one time I went up and I had a conversation on the phone with someone. And then, of course, this is different because it was live, but I had a conversation. They're like, "No, can't get you on that flight." And then I went up to the counter, and I was like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm trying to get me and my boss and it's on this flight, and we're trying to get there." And he's like, this girl's like, "Well, you know, do you need to go today?" I'm like, "Well, look, if we don't get there, here's the deal. If you can just get my boss on, that's great. If neither one of us get on this flight, it's been nice knowing you, because I'm screwed." And she just started laughing and again humanized it. And then it's like all of a sudden she's like, "Oh, guess what? We're gonna bump some of these or whatever," and she's making room, and we're on the flight. So don't develop this antagonistic relationship with another organization. With Iraqi soldiers, like, is it great working with Iraqi soldiers? No, it sucks. It's hard. But guess what? That's what we have to do. And I'll tell you something else. Strategically, the Iraqi soldiers that are descendants of the guys that we train, I mean, maybe not, I'm saying training or training descendants, right? The guys that we trained guys who just went and fought back and got Ramadi back from ISIS and got Mosul back from ISIS. Those are the guys that went in there and did the bulk of the fighting. Did they get supported by Americans? Yes. Did Americans do a kick-ass job of doing massive fire support? Yes. But the guys that were moving from street to street, those were majority Iraqi soldiers. Did they have special ops guys with them? Yes. But it was the majority of the people that were moving through the streets were Iraqi soldiers. And there's no way possible that wouldn't have happened if American coalition forces over the last, whatever it was, 10 years, 12 years, would have taken those guys and made them work and done the type of partner missions that we did with them. So it was, and when I say we, I'm not talking about us, the SEAL teams. I'm talking about everyone. Everyone made this concerted effort, and it ended up being a great call, because when those guys went out to finally have to fight to take these cities back, they were able to do it, not totally by themselves, but they were able to do it. They did it, and that's a vast improvement. If we would have sent the Iraqi troops as they were when we were in Ramadi into Mosul, they would have gotten decimated. So it's a credit to the U.S. military. It's a credit to the Iraqi military that they have now gotten up to speed where they can push forward. And it's a credit to the U.S. military and other coalition forces that worked with them to get them up to speed. And what that all boils back to is forming relationships with the people that you are dependent on. Not just the people, but the organizations. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think we learned the lesson. Let's use them for their strengths. And that's what we learned in Ramadi. We put them in situations where they could succeed. We took enough Americans where we could actually succeed and help them succeed. And of course, we put some some efforts to mitigate rest too. We always had armed guys. We always had guys looking around. We always presented a hard target if one of those guys decided that they wanted to start batting for the other team, and we were in a position to handle those problems, and we never had any issues as a result. But that's what you have to do. Is it's all about building coalitions and using people's strengths and complementing those strengths and working together as a team. It's cover move. If you don't do that, you're gonna fail.
Yeah. And to all you people at the airlines, thank you. Thank you for taking care of me over the years. Appreciate it.